Well, good morning and welcome to the Multifamily Unplugged Saturday morning radio show, the number one real estate investor, broker, and property management professional radio show on the air. Hey, this is where we're going to divide and dive into raw and unscripted conversation about the multifamily real estate and property management space. We're going to talk about current events. We're going to talk about things that are just going on in the marketplace. Two topics that really deserve some full attention, no fluff conversation, no BS, are current events and how to grow your business. Hey, I'm Mike Morawski, and I'm joined with my co-host this morning, C. Gordon Moose. Say hey real quick, Moose.
Hey guys, how are you?
Good to see you, Carl. And we provide raw and unscripted conversation. It begins spontaneously and real. That's how a real estate business can be. It can be spontaneous, and you need to be fast on your feet sometimes. So we take that into consideration. That's just what we provide every week for you. Me and my co-host Moose and I have over 50 years of experience and knowledge to give you. So grab your coffee, sit back, and enjoy this ride this morning. Boy, people are jumping on in droves this morning. It's nice.
It's good.
Welcome to everybody. Hey, today's sponsor for the show is the Multifamily Global Summit, where on October 15th through the 17th, you can join us for 3 days of networking and education and some fun as part of that as well. We're going to be joined by 20 of the top real estate professionals from around the country that are bringing you top-notch education, some tricks and tips to grow your multifamily real estate business and your investment management strategies. So go to Multifamily Global Summit right now and register for the event. We're going to put that up in the chat this morning so you know how to get there. Make sure that you show this to your friends. Make sure that you like this show and share it with your friends. And we're glad that you're here this morning. Hey, Moose, I know we have a guest today, and a longtime friend of yours, Danny Borrero from New York, and he's going to bring us some good adventure. So why don't you go ahead and introduce Danny?
Yeah. So hey Mike and everybody else, good to see you guys on this Saturday morning. For the new people, welcome. My name's C. Gordon Moose. I go by Moose. That's my last name. And Mike and I always like to bring on a guest. You know, this show is really just about sitting around as if we were having a cup of coffee or a beer or a glass of wine and just having a conversation. So we don't really have an agenda today, but I want to welcome our guest. You know, this guy's a guy I've known for a long time. He and I were actually college roommates way back when, and he was one of the first guys I met ever from New York City. He grew up in Brooklyn. He's the oldest of, I believe, 10 kids. His mom and dad are absolutely super people, hardworking. All the kids have done really well. And I know Danny and his two brothers run their real estate company. And, you know, he's going to let us know. But, you know, it really started with a store in Brooklyn. And then they just started expanding when Brooklyn, you know, wasn't what Brooklyn is now. So I'm really glad that he's joining us. And he's a very good old friend of mine. And just, you know, he's a guy with the Midas touch. You know, everything from my perspective that he touches, and he and I have done a few deals down in Florida. You know, he's just got that Midas touch. He looks at things from a very pragmatic standpoint, a very conservative standpoint. And as far as I know, he's never lost money on a real estate deal. Now, he might be able to tell us something different, but he's just a guy that I really admire because he started with, like most people, just with one property, saw opportunity and kept building it. And, you know, he and his family have a really nice portfolio. So welcome, Danny Borrero. Danny, how you doing?
Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for letting me participate. I'm looking forward to this, actually.
Yeah,
really good.
So share with the group, you know, how you got, you know, I know part of the story, but I guess I never, you know, when we get together, we don't talk, I don't know, we never really talked about all this, but, you know, I remember traveling from upstate New York downstate to Brooklyn when we were in college, and we go to your dad's corner store, and it was awesome. I mean, you know, and then I think you guys bought the building, and oh yeah, and you were you owned Postal Plus, which was before the UPS stores. You had a video store before Blockbuster. I mean, this guy's always been ahead of the curve.
Right. Yeah. So I started my entrepreneurship was literally instilled in me since I can remember. Right. It was just and what's funny, Carl, I remember sitting freshman year in Dobson Hall, and you sit in the middle and everybody's introducing each other and they're talking about what their majors are, and everybody most kids didn't know what the hell they wanted to study, right? And I kind of felt like the odd man out because I was the only one who said I'm going to be self-employed, and then they were all rolling their eyes at me, right? Now, what that vehicle was going to be, I just truly didn't know what that vehicle was going to be. But I knew I wanted to be self-employed from day one, and that's precisely what happened.
Hey, Carl, I don't mean to cut you off, but you know what? It's interesting, Danny, because we grew up in an era where being an entrepreneur was not cool.
No, it was not.
Right. Now it's cool. You can do all this social media stuff and post everything, and it's kind of cool to be an entrepreneur today. But back when we grew up, it was like you were like, you're a what? You know?
Yeah. So I had a government job when I graduated because I couldn't find any work, and I had been taking all these exams prior to while I was in college. That just in case factor. And I couldn't find work. It was 1985. Carl, you know how it was. And I remember I was there for a short period of time, and I was like, "There's no way I'm going to handle this. I can't do this for the next 20 years of my life." And not to say anything bad about government work jobs. It's just that wasn't what I was made of. That wasn't my DNA, right? So I remember my brother-in-law, who was going to be my future brother-in-law then, saying to me, I thought you said you wanted to marry my sister. And I says, I do. And he says, well, what kind of life you're going to provide? You're leaving this great job with a pension. And I was like, it'll happen. Don't worry about it. And, looking back at it now, it actually comes up in conversation every once in a while. Yeah.
But you were always involved. But you were always involved with your dad. I mean, not your dad never handed you anything, but your dad was a hardworking guy.
Oh yeah, 7 days a week, 12-hour days. Unless I was home, then I would work the weekends, and but then I would be putting.
You were behind the counter. You were involved with the business, so you got the advantage of seeing your dad. I hate to use the word hustle because I don't want to.
No, that's exactly what it was. It's not desecrating the entrepreneurship at all when you use the word hustle. Hustle is the prime ingredient in being a successful entrepreneur.
But your dad was smart. Your dad was, and I don't know how educated your father was, college-wise or whatever.
Just barely got out of high school. Struggled with that. I mean, but so my father and I, we were never academic. Carl, you know that as well as I do about me. But what we lack in academia, we made up with intensity.
Yeah, well, and your father was smart. He saw opportunity. You know what I mean? He was. I mean, listen. I used to always love to go down to New York with you and hang out with. And where would we go first? We'd go right to your dad's store, right?
Yeah.
We'd have a beer or you'd have a sandwich. And you guys, it's something. I don't know if it's still there or not, but it was right out of the movies. I mean, it was right out of the Bronx Tale, or it was awesome. It was a corner place. It had everything you wanted. I mean, it had beer, it had milk, it had
everything.
Sandwiches, it had pickle. I mean, all kinds of stuff. It was really, for me, it was a really great experience.
Well, for Carl, it was a great experience. I think we had over 130 different brands of beer. That was like my father's specialty. Carl would walk in, he was like, oh, his eyes would open up, right, Carl? All of us. So we were at that age. Who doesn't?
And we'd hang out, but your dad was, and your dad was also and is very well respected. He was a good businessman. Nobody messed with him, right? And he ran a good shop. And if I remember correctly, again, not to go into that because it's really, I mean, he was also good to the neighborhood. I mean, if somebody needed help or whatever, you know what I mean? And I think that rubbed off on you more than you think, Danny.
Yeah, it probably did. It probably did. But again, it's all about what I found. I'll try to give you a brief history. So in 1985, at the end of 1985, I opened up my first business, which was a video store. And that video store turned into a beeper store, over 110,000 beeper subscribers. Then that evolved to a cell phone store, all this at the same time doing the videos. Of course, we were there approximately 25 years. But while we were there, we actually also we got into the laundromat business. We also had a postal, it was called Postal Plus, where you had mailboxes, and you were doing UPS and FedEx services as well as postal services. And then we can continuously try to evolve, right? So while we were doing all the retail, in addition to having ATM machines that we would buy and put into different locations, that was actually one of the best business ventures that we ever did. That was incredible money, residual money. But as things, in every business things change, right? And you have to see the writing in the wall, and you have to constantly be educating yourself. I don't care what business you're in. If you're not continuously reading and educating and talking to other people in the business, it's really difficult to foresee what's coming in the future, right? And anticipating and be playing an offensive rather than defensive move, or being active rather than reactive, right? So then what we start all through that entire time, we kept picking up property, primarily within the neighborhood that we had our stores in, right? So eventually got to the point where we had enough property where we could actually then rid ourselves of all the retail that, in all actuality wasn't bad, because it provided the funds to get into the real estate market, right? But then we were able to live off of the properties themselves, and then grow upon that. So once we got rid of all the retail stores, and my father, the main thing was to get my father retired out of his store. And once we did that, then everything else went smoothly, right? We diverse ourselves from everything that was retail, and then once we were able to concentrate 100% within the real estate industry, it was like, then it just boomed. It just went crazy, and that's where we're at today.
It makes all the difference in the world, going in the direction you want to go in, that you're passionate about, than going the way the world tells you to go. You talk about people who say, "Oh, don't leave your job. You're going to leave that pension." What do you have? I remember growing up, that saying always was, 40 hours a week for 40 years, and you'll get a $40 watch when you're done.
Yeah.
So they give you your retirement party, but look what you have today in comparison to a $40 watch, right?
Yeah, listen, entrepreneurship is not for everyone. Moose knows one of my cousin, I won't mention him by name, but he's a retired police officer, and he did the Army Reserves, but he was active duty the last, I think, 10 or 12 years of the last I think he did 25 years in the reserves. So between both pensions, I mean, the man's making an incredible amount of money. He's our age, and he has a really great life. So I'm not telling you that working that 40 hours per week isn't a good thing. It's all individualized, I guess. It's like what makes you happy, right? Because being an entrepreneur by no means is an easy task, right?
No.
And we're working a lot more than 40 hours per week.
That's for sure. Hey, let me ask you a quick question. And what's your favorite kind of real estate? Remember, this is a multifamily show.
Yeah. So it all depends, and we've had this discussion, right? So it all depends on what region I'm investing, right? So here in New York City, I love mixed use properties where it's retail on the bottom, with residential on top, and then anything under 5 families, because above 5 families, what happens is you get into rent regulation laws where the city or the state themselves are dictating to you what your increases can be, and the rules and regulations. It's extremely difficult to navigate. And I know a lot of guys that make money with those properties, although they took a serious hit in value as a result of the new laws that were passed by New York State in the last 12 months. But that's never been my forte. I have very little tolerance to partner up with the government, for that matter, anyone else, right? So we try to stay under 5 families. Then say that again, Moose.
Oh, go ahead.
Then when I'm investing out of state, I used to invest for long-term single-family homes, multifamily properties, and what I found was that it was extremely difficult. And Carl will vouch to this. I'm extremely anal. I want things a specific way, and there's not one property that I would not live in myself that I own. So if it's not up to par for me to live in, I will not buy it, and nor would I place a tenant in it. And case in point, my daughter actually just moved into one of my apartments. So what I found was, although I was giving it to management companies, and in their defense, they were probably doing a decent job. It wasn't the job that I would have done. So I remove myself from the multifamilies from a distance. So in other words, I don't buy anything from a distance that's multifamily or single family homes, because in one single family homes, I find myself spending almost as much time as I would on one structure when I could have one structure with 5 tenants in it, right? So what I do from a distance, my brother David and I, we're partners in that side of the market. What we do is we buy condos because they're much easier to manage. It's less hands-on. So once we buy the condos, we renovate the inside, get a tenant ready, and then we tenant them. It's a little bit more work in the beginning because you have to do a lot of research on the HOA, making sure that it's managed well as far as fiscally and on the ground. But I don't, and even though we're paying those HOA fees, I'm not concerned with anything on the exterior of that property, which alleviates me from a lot of management, on-hand management. So, we have well over 100 units that we own out of state, primarily in Central Florida and some in the southern part of New Jersey. But believe it or not, I spend less time managing those units than I do the units that I have locally here in New York City.
Yeah.
That are
But
all so here in New York City, everything here is multifamily.
yeah, but under 5, right?
Under 5 units each, yeah. So we have multiple properties, and then of course each property has their own LLC, which we could get into later on why.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let
So
me ask you this, if you were to separate the residential side from the commercial retail little store office that you rent, is there a product that you like better on either side of that aisle or that is more efficient for you?
The commercial spaces are usually more efficient because it's a triple net lease, right? So when you rent it to them, they have to maintain the entire inside of that space, right? All the square footage, whether it be and they all have to pay, of course, their own utilities, including water and sewer. So every unit has uh, its own water meter, which I then quarterly send. I read the meter on a quarterly basis, send them that bill. They have to pay that. They all have to have their own heating units, their own everything is self-sufficient, is what I'm trying to say to you. Versus uh, uh, the individual apartments. But our individual apartments here in New York, what we started doing was we many years ago, about 20 years ago, every time we renovated an apartment, we made that unit self-sufficient. So every unit has its own water heater, its own boiler. So every time we rent an apartment, the tenants pay their own heat and their hot water, and they control their own thermostat. That way, I don't really have to deal with one tenant telling me that. Usually the tenant on the first floor tells me it's too hot. The tenant on the last floor tells me it's too cold. It's like raise it or lower it. I couldn't care less. Don't call me. You pay your own heat. Including bringing all new electric to the apartment, and then we put in the circuit breakers themselves, a circuit breaker box within the unit itself, to avoid any issues as far as getting a phone call in the middle of the night that a circuit breaker's out or something. Me having to call a super and go to the basement and open it. I don't want to deal with that. So we try to make every unit self-sufficient in itself.
Yeah, and most of the people on the call, Danny, are it's great that you, and I understand because of New York and because some of the laws there, me, I'm a former banker. 5 units is really the break point, for a number of different reasons, and I don't really know why the history of that, but in the banking business, that's the break point. Anything above 5 is considered commercial, so it's
Right.
it's analyzed differently, it's financed differently, it's the mortgage backing on Wall Street is different. So most of the people that we're talking to, at least in this forum, with the Multifamily Unplugged and the Multifamily Global Summit, it's really what Mike and I like to call that 2 to 4 to 6. The 2-unit, 3-unit, 4-unit, up to about 5 units.
Right. Right.
I mean, you can build a really, obviously. I mean, you've done it. You can build a really nice, residual cash flow and long-term net worth with those smaller units. And that's I don't want that to get lost in the conversation, because that's really the majority of the people that we're addressing in this forum are those individuals that are either in that space already, or they may have their condo, or they may flip a few houses, but now they see the benefit of what we call those 2 to 4 to 6, you know?
And hang on one second. I just want to make a comment. First, want to welcome all the people who've come on and joined us here this morning for the first time. But also, if you have a comment, put a comment in the chat box. If you have a question or you want to know something from Danny that we can get answered for you, use the chat box this morning.
Yeah, here's a question that came up. Danny, can you answer this? What is a beeper? A lot of people are like, "What's a beeper?" Right?
Really? I didn't see that, but
Mike, I'm
Moose,
serious. This guy
Moose, that was a low blow. A beeper, you know what a beeper
but I'm
is?
trying to explain to you. I'd fly to New York, and we'd go. Danny would say, "Yeah, I'm not going to pick you up at the airport. Just meet me in Brooklyn. Meet me at the store." I'd go in the store. It was called. What's your email, Danny? Tell me what your email is.
it's still it's what my original email is still the same. It's
What is it?
MRD Mr. D Video, MRD Video at
that's
AOL.com.
That was the name of the store
Yeah.
before Blockbuster. And a lot of people don't even know what Blockbuster is because Netflix put Blockbuster out of business. Danny's original store was called Mr. D Video in Brooklyn. So I'd find my way there, and there'd be beepers, there'd be videos, there'd be cell phones, and you said you had 100,000 what'd you have?
Over 110,000 beeper subscribers. So every time you have a beeper, right? When somebody had a beeper, they would buy the beeper from me, and then I would provide them the service, and then I would buy that number was a subscription, and that beeper, right? It had its own number. So that subscription I owned it, of course, buying it through a first party vendor, but I would own that number, and they were literally paying me to use that number on a monthly basis.
Yeah, so just to put it in perspective, if any of you are under 30, chances are the day you were born,
yes,
your doctor got a beep. Your doctor was carrying a beeper. The doctor
Right.
that delivered you was carrying a beeper because that's how doctors, before there were cell phones,
right.
I mean, you would have a beeper, and you'd look at the beeper, and So anyway, Danny.
This show's just gone sideways. You know that. This is multifamily. You guys.
Well, I just want to throw some humor in there just to bust his chops, but
Yeah.
But seriously, no. I mean, I was at the time. I was a salesman. I had that nice job with the 401k.
I remember
the 2 weeks off, and I'd go down to New York and have a blast, and I'd walk in, and there's Danny. He's got this thing going on, like, and then, well, you could just smell the money. You could say, oh, I mean, you'd stand there for half an hour, and there'd be 50 people that come in to pay their bill, and he's just ringing the cash register, right? And
listen, it's the same thing as in real estate, right? It's residual income, right? It's cash flow. So I own that number. So basically what I did was I took my retail experience and fast forwarded and figured out a way how to indoctrinate or put it into the real estate business. So
people were paying you monthly, right?
Precisely, right? So I wanted that cash flow and that residual income, and at the time beepers were providing that. So now I took that same experience and the income earned from that experience and reinvested it into real estate, which now provides cash flow. It's the same exact thing. The only difference is it's a longer living business model.
Well, and
hang on.
Beepers are gone, but real estate's not going anywhere.
People always need a place to live, right?
So Danny, a couple things here. First of all, can you explain residual income and talk about the different types of income, the different ways you can make money, but explain what residual is. And then there's some questions coming up in the chat that we'll ask you also.
All right. So residual income is essentially cash flow, right? And in the real estate business, and I'm sure we all know this, it's like, you look at your monthly expenses versus your monthly gross rents that you're collecting. You subtract your expenses, and whatever's left is your cash flow, your residual income. In the beginning stages of it, I got to be honest with you, we weren't really making much residual income. But as we fine-tuned the model, we were figuring out, okay, we could actually have equity in the property the day we buy it, and have income immediately, right? So it's all about the experience and learning how to do this. Now, Carl and Mike, I got to tell you something. You guys are providing such an incredible value that I'm not even sure most people actually appreciate or understand it because it's so common that you could get information for free now on social media, right? So all three of us here, everything that we're actually talking about and trying to teach, we learned this the hard way. There was no YouTube, or there was no Zoom conferences, or podcasts, or individuals that were willing to share this information literally for free, no less, right? So we had to literally learn this through trial and errors. Whereas if I had had this platform when I started, I got to tell you the truth, I would have got out of the retail business sooner than rather than later. In addition to, I would have made a lot less mistakes, costly mistakes, and I would dare to say I would be bigger than what I am today.
Yeah, and for me too. I mean, I bought that first. I was a banker, as you know, for years, and my clients kept saying, geez, Carl, you know how to analyze property. You see us financing. You know how to, to do all that stuff, and you don't own. All I owned was my condo where I lived. So I jumped in. I bought an 18-unit building, and I made a ton of mistakes. You know what I mean? And I really didn't have anybody to hold my hand or walk me through it or guide me through it. And I mean, and that is the beautiful thing. It doesn't matter what you're doing in life. If you have a guide or a mentor or somebody to follow, they're not, they're going to show you where the black holes are and the red flags and the pitfalls are. They're going to say, don't make that mistake, or, hey, this contract, you missed this this clause or this contingency on this contract, and this might cost you 10 grand. It might cost you some real money. And believe me, Mike, you and I and Danny, we paid for our education for sure.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt.
Yeah, without a doubt.
That's one of the things I say, and actually my marketing guy, Joel, sent me an email this morning. He goes, hey, can you quantify, one of the things I say is that I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on coaching and training and books and tapes. And he said, can you quantify that for me? I said, yeah. Here, I've been in one-on-one coaching for 15 years at $1,000 a month. That's $180,000 just on that. That doesn't equate for books and tapes and travel and seminars and everything else that goes along with it, right? I mean, so when you talk about that education, how did we get it? Not only through trial and error, but we went to people with wisdom and paid a lot more money than you pay for that stuff today. Hey, listen, Danny, can you explain what triple net is?
So triple net in a commercial business, and when you rent a commercial space, essentially means that they even pay the portion. So in my case, if it's a standalone building, they would pay the entire taxes, real estate taxes, in addition to their rent, right? In my case, because there's usually 3 additional more stories above the store, they would pay 25% of whatever the increase of taxes are from the date that they take possession. So if they took possession 10 years ago and the real estate taxes were $1,000, let's just make it simplistic, right? They would be paying $250. Rather, if the real estate taxes were $1,000 and it went up to $2,000 over those 10 years, they would be paying me $250 because they're paying 25% of the increase from the base year. The base year would be determined on the lease, right? Whatever that lease, the start date of that lease is. In addition, they pay their own water and sewer charges. They pay because I put in a separate water meter. So that meter tells me how many cubic yards of water they use. And of course, the city tells me how much they're charging per cubic yard and what they're charging for the sewer charges. So I would send them a bill for whatever that usage is. In addition to, they pay for their own gas, their own electric. I don't concern myself with anything in reference to that space, other than that when they do the construction work to renovate, to retrofit to what that business may be, that it's all done with permits and done according to the codes.
So one other thing I want to add to that is the types of triple nets that are out there. So if you look at businesses like Walgreens,
right,
AutoZone, CVS Pharmacy,
right,
those are all triple net deals, right? So as an investor, you have an opportunity to go buy a piece of land, buy a building for one of those organizations. You sign a pre-agreement with them, and they'll come in and sign a 20-year lease, and they're responsible.
Yeah, can I just jump in for a second? I mean, yeah, but how that applies to multifamily is if you own a mixed use. So a mixed use property, for those out there is like a storefront with maybe 6 units above it, and the triple net lease applies to that retail space, right? So within, I mean, because the conversation about triple net is usually, when you're talking about a bank or Walgreens or something, but how it applies to a mixed use property, which is, a retail, and we've seen those, right, in New York or
Yep.
Chicago, that we used to buy them, right? We'd have a retail on the first floor, and then above that would be just regular rent. And triple net does not apply to just regular apartment renters. It applies to the retail part of the mixed use. So Danny, there's another question here for you, but I want to get to this real quickly first.
I'm listening.
There's a question before the one. So there's a question about rental income, if that can qualify you, to go out and buy multifamily.
I saw that. I thought that you would be better qualified to answer that.
So as a banker, the quick answer is yes. I mean, if you have income from any source, whether it's a single family home rental or whatever, the bank will take a look at that when considering a multifamily loan. So it doesn't really matter, as long, obviously it's legitimate income and it shows up on your K-1s or your tax returns, the bank will definitely look at that. So the other question I want to throw back to you, Danny, and I understand this, I know Mike does too, because I think it's a smart move. You talked about utilities, right? And you talked about separating the electric in areas like New York or northern areas. We have boilers or heaters, right? Individual AC, air conditioning units. So the question was, do you do that in the unit itself, or you do that in the basement? And I
see that from Ed. So it all depends on the property, Ed. Right. So essentially, sometimes there is space in the apartment itself to do it in, where you could build out a utility closet. And it also depends on the building codes for your specific area. Some specific municipalities will not allow you to do that. However, most do. What I like to do is put them in the basement. Although this has never happened to me, I've heard of it happening to other landlords where they have a landlord-tenant issue. And as a result of that, prior to the tenant leaving, they wreck the heating unit itself as a spite attempt against the landlord. So again, that's never happened to me. I've heard of it happening. So that's one of the primary reasons why I prefer to put everything in the basement. In addition to, I also prefer to put everything in the basement so that if there's any repairs that need to be done, I don't really have to go into the residence of the tenant themselves. I could go directly into the basement and make as much of a mess as I want without having to worry about cleaning up, because we could always clean up later on. It doesn't have to be as clean as we would have to leave it if it was a residential apartment.
So I got a question for you, Danny. A lot of people are thinking, that listen to this, are thinking about getting into it, right? Or they're thinking about graduating. So what do you suggest for somebody that's just starting out in terms of really identifying the type of property? Because there's so many different types of properties out there, and we're a multifamily. Our main thing is multifamily. But just give our listeners an idea of how you.
So there's a lot of for instance, I've owned units that were more than 5, 6, actually, as much as 18 units, right? And I quickly learned I don't. That's not within my DNA. So we all need to take look at who we are individually and what our risk tolerance is and what our patience levels are, because dealing with tenants is by no means an easy task, and that it makes it even worse if you don't vet the tenant properly. Vetting the tenant is 50% of this job. Making sure that not only that tenant is all good on paper, but that it's less likely to be a personality conflict. So have the conversations with the tenant, see what kind of individuals they are. Some people are great on paper, some people are just decent people, but the personality is going to give you an issue, right? So don't rent to them, because why get into a relationship, because essentially you're married to them, right? Having said that, I crawled before I walked, and I walked before I ran, and I highly recommend it the same way for everyone else, right? I've seen individuals go directly into a 24-unit building from owning a 1 or 2 family, and they fall on their face. And they primarily fell on their face because they never took the time out, one, to educate themselves and speak to people like, or watch what's available to them, like what's on this format right now between Mike and Moose. And two, they never took the time out to learn how to deal with individuals or figure out how to navigate through the turmoil of having an issue with a tenant. And it's much easier to do that in a 2, 3, 4 family than it is when you get to the 24, 26, 28 unit buildings. The other thing is, I personally stay away from anything. I won't go as high if it's not over 12 units. I don't recommend getting it because it's too small to have a super, right? But you need one because 12 units there's gonna be issues, right? But so you have to go to the 18 to 20 above that units because then it's not too small to have a super. But then you get more, but again, you'll learn this as you go.
What's interesting is you're kind of talking about a sweet spot, right? Find
Right.
your sweet spot. Like I knew after I had done a number of deals that my sweet spot was between 150 and 250 units. I knew that right in there that you could make all kinds of cash flow, especially if you were doing a value add B class property, right?
That's right.
And so, if you're on the small side, know where your sweet spot is. If you're on the bigger side, know where your sweet spot is. Everybody thinks, oh God, a 400 unit or a 500 unit deal is
No.
great. But you know what? Find what works best for you. That's why I'm saying, at 150 to 175 units, boy, you cash flow all day long and it's good. So
Yeah, I just like to add one thing to that, Mike, is that you also need to find what area of the country you're comfortable in, because there's a lot of different areas with different tenant landlord laws, right? So here in New York, I stay at below 5 units because of the tenant landlord laws. If I was to go to an area where, for instance, in the state of Florida, where the laws are much more favorable to landlords than they are in New York, and I wanted to be on that side of the business, yeah, I would be looking at the 100-unit complexes because, again, the laws are much more on the side of the landlord than they would be on the tenant. There's a lot of different variables that you need to consider when deciding how many units how big of a building do you want to buy with how many units.
yeah.
So there's another question we want to get to real quick because then this conversation always goes quickly. But Danny, a super for some people, you're definitely showing your New York accent. A super is a superintendent, if nobody caught that. But a super is it's not a really strong building; it's a superintendent.
Right.
But somebody here asks, what if you're just starting out with no doors? What should I do to obtain my first multifamily?
Again, the first thing I would do is financially prepare myself. The second thing I would do is sufficiently educate myself. And the third thing I would do is follow guys like Mike and Moose and myself for the free content, and then get yourself a mentor. And at all the time, constantly looking, right? So with the first three in itself, you'll be prepared what's the word I'm looking for? You'll be prepared to see the opportunity versus if you don't have those first three, no matter how many opportunities present themselves to you, you will never be prepared to see it.
Right. And let me add to that, because I think that one thing that we miss as a new investor, if you don't have any deals and you're going out and you're buying your first real estate deal, and this even goes for the investor who hasn't bought a property in 2 years, you can go do this. Go do it FHA. Go buy a property, house hack, move in, do an FHA mortgage, and you're gonna, that's an easy way in. Plus, it gives you all kinds of experience along the way, not only on the acquisition, but on the operation side. So, and I like what you said about find a mentor. That's really important because success leaves clues, right? And that's what Moose and I talk about all the time is success leaves clues. And if you follow people like yourself that have been successful, you're gonna ultimately be successful yourself.
Yeah, it's again, like I said earlier, being on this platform is the first place they should probably start, right? There's so much information here. It's just a matter of dissecting the real guys from the ones that are wannabes, right? I mean, you guys have so much experience, right? I've been doing this for 31 years. We're real guys, and whereas I can't get over how many people on there have done only a few deals and have been on it for a year or two and want to become want to give advice as if they're professionals. And I'm like, sorry, that's not really working for you. That's actually, believe it or not, that's when that because of that poor advice coming from individuals that truly don't really have the experience. They've had success on what they've done, but they're giving information that's so incorrect. Is why I started on within the social media platform giving my opinions or trying to teach, and all for free.
Yeah, so I just put that in, by the way, Golden Nuggets, they can find you. So Danny, are you one of the panelists, or are you speaking? I can't remember, Mike. Is he a panelist in the upcoming Multifamily Global Summit?
Yeah, Danny will be a panelist. And gee, I can't remember who he's with, but I know he's in a group, 3 other guys, and I'm going to moderate that panel. So if people have questions, you want to ask Danny more questions, or you want multifamily questions answered at the summit, make sure you get those to me. You can email me directly at mike@mycoreintentions.com. And, we'll make sure that we get these panels questions answered for you at the summit. We have 2 panels, 2 days, so Friday and Saturday at the summit.
Yeah, and I put Danny's email, Danny. I hope you don't mind. I put your
No, I
email.
don't mind. I just want to make a correction on the YouTube channel. It's USA Land Ventures.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. But the name of your thing is Golden Nuggets, right?
Well, we have a series that's called Golden Nuggets, #Golden Nuggets. Within that, or you could find me also under my name and under USA Land Ventures on Instagram, as well as on Facebook. Facebook is a great, I like Facebook a little bit more, only because it allows me to put articles that I find that are interesting, that'll be beneficial to the real estate community, whereas Instagram doesn't allow me to do that.
Hey,
Yeah, so
one
it's
thing I
also
really like about you, Danny, is that you're still in the trenches. You do that live video from your van, going to the job with your hat on and your
Yeah,
sleeves
yeah.
rolled up, and you're gonna pound some nails or sweat some pipe. And that's one thing. You're still in the trenches, and it's okay to do that. But know that you don't have to do that as a
No, yeah,
multifamily
Mike,
operator.
I do that, one, because I love what I do, right? That's one. And two, as I said earlier, I'm extremely anal, and I think I want everything done to perfection, right? And three, it's a big difference when you send somebody and they know they're not going to be overlooked, or that rather they're not going to be checked on, versus when you're there and you notice they're doing something incorrect or taking a shortcut, and you immediately stop it and you say, no, that's done wrong, right? So am I still picking up a hammer all the time? No, I'm not. Do I pick up material when I'm on my way there, and I call up my guy and he says, what are you missing? He says, well, I need 2 more sheets of sheetrock or something. Yeah, I'll pick it out with the van and bring it there. It cuts down on the time that it's going to take to finish it, right?
Right.
But the other thing is that I noticed, and this is really important, guys, there's nothing that my contractors will do that I'm not willing to do myself. And I make it a point, and I make it known to every different job, every contractor on the job site. You ain't doing it right, you're off my job. And I don't have even if it means I gotta lug 50 sheets of 5/8 sheetrock up to two flights of stairs myself. So be it, I'll do it. And that point gets across immediately, so everybody gets on their toes, right? Once you kick out that first person, and they say, wait a minute, he's not only going to kick him out, he's going to do the job himself because he doesn't want to hold back the job. Everybody gets into line. Everybody.
And one thing about that is, it's a lot easier to ask somebody to do something for you if they've seen you or know that
Yes.
you'll do it too.
That's right.
It's like digging a ditch, right? If you've got a guy working for you and you ask them, hey, dig that ditch or move that pile of gravel, but they know that you've done it, it's a lot easier. So coming from that entrepreneurial spirit, right?
So there's one more question because we're getting close to the end here, but there's a question about FHA qualifications if you're a trust or an LLC or corporation. And, that really, it's been a while since I've been in the banking business. My gut feeling is that it's only for individuals. However, there's going to be a sponsor at the Multifamily Global Summit. He is a multifamily lender, and I think he's going to be doing the deal analysis with us, Mike. He's a guy, that could definitely answer that question for you, because that's really, I see the question, And I don't want to give you the wrong answer. However, I know this individual, could absolutely answer that and any other lending questions for you. And that's one of the other things I wanted to talk about. It's not only about education, it's also about community, and it's about the network. And I know, Mike, you're a huge network guy. I've built a network. Danny, just in like 2 minutes, tell us how important your network is. Tell us how important it is to be active.
It's everything. Your network. Well, okay. So let's take a step back, right? My network has increased over the years, primarily because now people are looking for me, and I've created a brand without realizing that's what it was even called back when, right? Everyone uses the word brand today extremely loosely, and I get actually agitated about it. A brand is created over a serious amount of time. And in my case, my brand is my name, and my name demands respect because we always keep our word. I can't tell you how many times I've done a handshake deal, and after I've done it, I realize, you know what, it's not going to be as profitable as I thought it was going to be. Maybe it's not worth it, but I'll still do the deal because I said I was going to do it, right? So that brand has increased. So, and I'll give you an example. So, many of the properties, a lot of people ask us all the time, like, how did you get that property? How'd you get this one? I never saw it even listed, or whatever the case may be, right? Well, it came in through a short sale negotiator where the previous buyer walked away from, or it came in from a title company where they did all the title work, they're ready to close, and the buyer walked away from. It came in from an attorney who's a foreclosure attorney who's looking to, rather a bankruptcy attorney who's looking to stop the foreclosure, calls me up and gets me, and if the numbers make sense, I'll put that under contract so that he could pursue a short sale deal on it, right? It comes from realtors that, will have 24 hours before they have to put a property on the MLS. Guess what? They call me first. Why? Because they're going to get the entire commission, right? And they know that if I say yes, it's a done deal. It's irrelevant what comes up afterwards, right? That I'll work through all the troubles. So it's a brand that we've created, and that brand is honesty. That these guys will get it done, and once they give you their word, it is what it is.
Right, and you're known within your community, right? You have
precisely right. So your networking is so important. It is the foundation of the business.
Right. And Mike, before we take it home, I just want to invite everybody. This is really an invitation. I want to invite everybody to join us in a couple of weeks. Danny's going to be there. Mike's going to be there. We've organized this multifamily global summit. It's really about building a community, expanding your network and providing information from 20 plus speakers from around the country. It's going to be over 25 hours of material, and we priced it so pretty much everybody can afford it. It's $9 for the general admission seats, which is just the Facebook Live. And if you upgrade to the VIP All Access Pass, it's $90. I think it's going to be the best $90 anybody spends because, I'm going to listen to every speaker because I know I'm going to learn some stuff. And if you use, whose promo code should we use, Mike? Yours or mine or Danny's? You could get a 20% discount.
Yeah, use Danny's promo code.
Yeah. So Danny, your last name is Borrero.
Yep.
All right. Use that. I'm going to type it in the thing, but you can go. It's in a couple of weeks. It's all going to be recorded. You can go back and listen to it. We're going to do breakout rooms with panel discussions, deal analysis. I'm telling you right now, I wish I would have had something like this when I started off. And
God, yeah.
Listen,
what a difference.
If you're serious about investing in real estate, invest in yourself first. Spend the $90 less 20%. It'll be 70 some odd dollars, and I guarantee you, it's gonna be worth your while. So I'll put that in the.
And there's a couple things that we didn't, that you didn't mention. You were talking about the lender. We have a lender that's going to be playing cash flow. And if you're a VIP and you can go play cash flow, and don't worry about missing anything else, because as a VIP, you're going to get all the recordings. So you're going to get over 25 hours worth of material that you can go back and listen to at your leisure. And that alone, when you can listen to things repetitively, sometime I'll tell my story about getting into real estate and listening to a cassette tape over and over again to learn how to go after for sale by owners, and built my real estate business on that. But it's about, the education and repetitiveness of learning the same thing once we master the repetitious boredom of something, you can be successful. So whether it's prospecting, looking for deals, building a network, education, whatever it is, it will help you grow immensely, not only professionally, but personally as well. So yeah, the Multifamily Global Summit is definitely, the biggest real estate event or multifamily real estate event of 2020. I was talking to a guy who's in the industry, and yesterday we were looking at the speaker lineup, and he said, I can't believe you've got some of these people talking, Dugan Kelly and Michael Zhao and Brian Burke. And, so there are some big name guys that are going to be there. Michael Blank, if anybody knows him. And so come, get information, get knowledge, go register today, take advantage of the 20% discount. Danny, thank you.
I just got to say, Mike, I think what you guys are doing is an incredible service to the real estate investment community, and I think it's at such a low price point. I know you guys are not making any money on this, so you're obviously doing it for the love of the business, and I wanted to thank you for that and for having me on. And I just thought about this, and you guys have joined, participated in this. We have a Wednesday night mentorship class for 1 hour at 6 p.m. And Mike and Moose have been so incredibly generous with their time participating in that. We're going to be posting their video up on YouTube in the next week that we just did. And I just wanted to thank you guys for that.
Thank you.
Mike, take us home. But Danny, thanks for coming. It's always good to see you, buddy. And tell your family I say hello. And Mike, take us home, bud.
Yeah. Hey, Danny, I just want to say thank you. It's been great to get to know you. I've known Moose a long time, and he introduced me to you this year, and it's been great to know you.
Likewise.
And everybody who's been here this morning, hey, if you need anything, you can call Danny directly. You can email him. His information is in the chat box there. You can get me or Moose, our emails, at phone numbers, whatever. Reach out to us. If there's any questions or anything that we can help you with from a mentoring standpoint, don't hesitate to reach out. Everybody have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Enjoy your family, and we will talk to you soon.
Take care, guys.
Thanks, guys. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Mr. D.
Yeah, thank you, Joseph.